We're all good. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do see that Andrew has joined us. Excellent. So we are, I've got 1 minute too. So. There we go. Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order this January 31st, 2024 meeting of the Redevelopment Task Force. And at this point in time, I will ask if there are any declarations of conflict of interest. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we can progress. We don't have any delegations this morning, but we do have 4 items for direction and discussion. And we will be beginning with Mr. Rodriguez, who is going to present item 4A on our agenda. And I do know that there's a slide deck involved. So Mr. Rodriguez, did you want to do an introduction? Will they call up the slides for you?
Yes, that would be great. What I'll be sharing the slides from my computer this afternoon. So just while it's coming up here, the overview that I'll be providing for the group this afternoon is some of the activities and major milestones that were achieved or that are ongoing since we last met in the last year. We'll be talking about the schedule and work plan, what's upcoming, including the tender schedule, as well as some of the upcoming key decisions or meetings with the task force and or council that are upcoming. Can everyone see the screen I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start off with the update with the Ministry of Long-Term Care technical approvals. So there were 2 key submissions that went in last year. The first one was our preliminary plans, and a resubmission was required after the value engineering. We did receive approval to proceed with the second and final technical submission, which was the working drawings. So this went in early October. We received some comments from the ministry in a timely manner. We were working with a 1-month time frame, and we were pleased to receive the full review and comments within this time frame, and had responses back to them by mid-December. This was a great news story in the early new year, but on January 9th, the project did receive the approval to proceed and tender the construction portion. So whilst it is one major milestone from the ministry, there are still 3 other items that are required before being able to close the tender and submit a package to the ministry for an approval to construct. So we'll be speaking about those in some of the upcoming slides, but certainly a great milestone to have achieved earlier this month for the project. So in terms of the site plan application and agreement, so that would be for the SPA that you see here in the building permit. We will need to have the building permit submitted once the tender closes, once we have a package going to the ministry for an approval to construct. So it's important that we finalize the site plan agreement and the building permit as soon as feasible. Reason being, we'll have to submit it to the ministry, but also if there are any changes or revisions that impact the scope, we want to make sure that the contractors have enough time to price this into their submissions. So I can say that both the building permit and the site plan application are ongoing. The site plan application was resubmitted in mid-October. And again, this was a resubmission as a result of the value engineering, which changed the overall site plan and layout. The building permit went in mid-October, and I would say we are in advanced stages for both of these. There's been 3 rounds of technical reviews and comments with the building permit between the designer and the plan reviewer. So we feel very confident that we're approaching the finish line. And the same with the site plan agreement. We're hoping to have these resolved quite shortly, and certainly within the next 4 weeks. In terms of project schedule update, we are planning to go out to tender tomorrow on February 1st, and we will have a 5-week tender period, which includes a question deadline, any addendum, and our closing is planned for Thursday, March 7th. The 3 pieces, as I mentioned, that we want to have by the time the tender closes are the site plan approval, the building permit, or at least confidence with the building permit that all technical items have been resolved, and then the financing agreement with Infrastructure Ontario, so that we're in a position to close, review, making a recommendation to award, and submit that to the Ministry of Long-Term Care along with those critical items. We would then start construction and awarding a contract in the second half of April, with physical mobilization to site sometime in May. What we are forecasting at the moment is a first resident date. I put over here December 2026, but we're forecasting this to be in the fourth quarter of 2026. And what we've done is these are dates that have been communicated with the Ministry of Long-Term Care as part of County of Grey's development agreement, and they reflect the timeline and buffer that projects would typically include after occupancy has been achieved to go back and forth with the ministry and obtain their approval for a first resident to be admitted to the home. Again, I put the 3 items in red here: the site plan approval, the building permit, and the financing agreements, as these continue to be items that we'll track very closely. And should an adjustment be needed to the tender schedule in the form of an extension, we will monitor and act accordingly if we feel that that would be necessary based on how any of these elements are proceeding. The last piece I want to provide an update on is where we see key upcoming milestones and task force decisions. So tomorrow we will be issuing the tender package, as I mentioned earlier. The task force and council approvals we would see being in the range of March 19th to 28th, and these will have to be confirmed to nail down the date and time. And this would be based on our tender closing on March 7th, and there being no extensions required that would push this past March 7th. Our goal would be, following task force and council approval, to submit a complete package to the Ministry of Long-Term Care by the end of March. Typically, this review by the ministry is one of the quicker ones. So we would expect this to be in the 2 to 4 week range. And by the end of April, we would be in a position to award based on the package submitted to the ministry. And then we're looking at physical mobilization sometime in May, which would coincide nicely with some of the ongoing early works, road works and site grading that are ongoing. This concludes the update I wanted to share with the group for today. I want to pause here to see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe if you could stop sharing your slide, that'll make it a little easier for us to see all the faces. And if anybody wants to use their virtual hand, we'll begin with Warden Milne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Andrew, for that presentation. Back to your first slide, the update on the MLTC technical approvals. Can you give me an example of what comment the ministry would send to you? Like what sort of...
Yeah, sure. So outdoors. So one of the big comments that came up was outdoor space, and outdoor space being secure, and how residents would access the outdoor space. So they were looking into, had specific questions about nurse call locations, looking in terms of door hardware and security. And we had to show the evidence and what was built into design specifically for outdoor spaces.
Okay, so you're clearly satisfied, and that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add, there weren't a tremendous amount of comments. We see some projects where there's an exhaustive list of comments, but there weren't many. And I think that was part of the reason why there was a quick turnaround from when we received comments to getting the approval by the ministry.
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Hard work is starting to pay off. So are there other questions? Don't see any other hands raised. Okay, so it looks like we're good with that. So are there any closing comments, Mr. Rodriguez, before we move on to the next item?
Chair Magisters, I think Councillor McQueen had a question.
Oh, sorry, I missed that hand. Please go ahead, Councillor McQueen.
Sorry about that. I just had a thought, and it's just when they get into the construction side, I know we've all probably experienced construction noise, dust, all those kind of stuffs. And I guess my question is how are we mitigating those issues before they become issues, or do we have a plan, or is that part of the plan, part of the site plan? I just know that people love their environment until somebody changes it. So I'm not suggesting there is going to be something, but it is something that does sometimes occur.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's 2 or 3 approaches or strategies that we use. to deal with this. One is in the contract documents or tender documents, we put clear requirements in terms of dust, noise, notices that need to be provided to minimize these disruptions with neighbors. And then the other component is through proactive communication as the project is kicking off and ramping up to make sure that any neighbors or the community is aware of what's upcoming and what's being done to mitigate some of those impacts. And, you know, I would see some of this being a continuation or building on what's occurring as part of the early works and road construction. But it is a clear contractual requirement that is built into that will be built into the contract with the successful bidder.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments?
Just to follow up with that.
Oh,
one.
sorry, that follow-up? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that we have found for projects that they have like a public meeting or a bit of a meeting even before it starts. They have the contacts, people come if they have any questions and all that kind of stuff. We find it to be proactive is really so beneficial because you know, people that have any questions before it starts or they have the contact and you maybe that's what you're talking about. I just know that's something that we and Grey Highlands have done, and it seems to be quite successful on the part of being proactive and just having that public meeting before it even starts. So I don't know if there's any comments there.
I know I would just add that I've seen that done successfully on other projects as well. So, you know, we'll work with County of Grey and the team to look at the best forum or format to communicate or have those sessions.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got two hands. I'm going to go over to CAO Wingrove next.
Thanks, everyone. And just to follow up on Councillor McQueen's, the one thing that's unique to this site, and we're so fortunate, is that the immediate adjacent neighbors are minimal, right? Like you've got our own building behind, our own land to one side, a pit to the other, and then just that little bit. Randy, maybe you can say, we had a discussion about you know, the route that the trucks would be using. We went and we did provide notification during the early works period to the people that were moving on and off the site. And I'm just back, but I hadn't heard anything that there were any issues that way. I don't know if you want to comment on the rock versus south, etc.
Yeah, I was just going to comment to say most of the, I think, elements that could be disruptive with the overall project are currently being done as part of the early works project. That's the extension of the roads, the extension of the services, tying into existing services. Not to get into my update later on, but that's pretty much completed, like those key pieces. And so it'll primarily be some construction traffic and as a result of the site. But as Kim indicated, the site is pretty isolated. Once they're mobilized and on site, it's very minimal in terms of impacts. The site will be pre-graded, ready to go for the general contractor. So there's very little works that will be done other than actual building activity that's happening. So in terms of just digging the foundation and building the actual building. So most of the disruptive work, I think, is or has already happened. And as Kim indicated, we put out a lot of notices around to the surrounding neighbors that and provides as much information as we could about the project, contact information if they had any concerns. We have heard very little, if any, concerns about the project throughout. And any minor things that have popped up, we've been able to deal with quite quickly with the earthworks contractor. And yeah, so it's so far, I think it's been an excellent project, and the neighbors are quite pleased so far with the work that's been done to date.
Okay, thank you for that. And next we'll move on to Councillor Greg.
Thank you, Chair. And Paul had a nice point, but I just want to hear from the consultant that there is no restrictive language moving above local bylaws in that tender package. Because restrictive language is something that we'll pay dearly for. So I think I know the answer, hearing the comments from Kim and Randy, but I would just like to hear it with a little bit more certainty that there is no restrictive language in the tender document above local bylaws?
So I would say the starting point was the local bylaws. This process hasn't been done in a vacuum. We have consulted extensively with Grey County as part of it to see, to your point, where we can remove some restrictive language and not require items that are either not needed or aren't expected to be enforced to reduce any premiums, to your point. So we've been working very closely with County of Grey in reviewing the front end documents.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Rodriguez? Okay, excellent. So now, Madam Clerk, did you want a motion to receive this update?
No, that's okay. It's for information at this time.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, then we're able to move on to item 4B, which is the Infrastructure Ontario process. And we have a verbal update beginning with Director Spicer, and then CAO Wingrove will have something to add. So Director Spicer? Oh, sorry. Did you want to begin, CAO?
I just wanted to comment, Mr. Rodriguez needs to step away from the meeting now. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to him for being with us this afternoon.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Director Spicer, would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so to provide an update on the status of our application with Infrastructure Ontario, they reached out last week with a few questions in advance of, there's a meeting today with their Real Estate and Lending Committee. And at that meeting, they discussed applications, and underwriting gave me the understanding that that's where the real discussion occurs. So our application will, after today's meeting, will then go to the board on February 8th. So they had some questions about whether we'd selected a contractor. I responded that no, until we had financing secured, obviously, and ministry approvals, we wouldn't be doing so. They also asked questions about the number of pre-qualified contractors, and let me know that in some circumstances, they'd heard that the ministry had waived the minimum number of 3 pre-qualified contractors. And she thought it was very promising that we didn't have an issue pre-qualifying at least 3. So she thought that was very good news. They also confirmed that they had no information on what's happening with the construction subsidy, other than many had expressed interest and were in the same position as we were, where we weren't able to move forward by being in the ground August 31st. And other than that's about it. And then on the weekend, they forwarded a sustainability questionnaire that Kim's going to speak to.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So it just to, oh, sorry, did you have a question?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Just to then continue on. So further to Mary Lou's update, I then had a follow-up conversation with the Ministry of Long-Term Care. I just wanted our project manager and her manager to be kind of aware of the conversations with Infrastructure Ontario, just to ensure that everyone was connected and had the same information. So I let them know that the conversation had taken place about the kind of information that Infrastructure Ontario had discussed with Mary Lou. And then she asked me if we still intended to initiate construction after the end of March. And I said, yes, once everything was in order, we would be going ahead. And then I went on to add that we did hear some comments that another round of top-up funding might be coming, perhaps as part of the spring budget. And I said that if that were to be the case, that I hope we would be either included, despite potentially beginning before that, or that we would have some heads up that that this funding was coming, that would allow us to make the kind of appropriate decisions that we would about our timing, right? If a month meant a different amount of subsidy, you might want to take up on that. Unfortunately, they didn't bite, and simply indicated that at this time the the subsidy is the 2022 funding model and that there is no additional top-up available. So just to confirm, and then I did put that question to them about if there was to be an announcement trying to protect our interests. Beyond that, with regard to the sustainability questionnaire, and I'll share this, Tara's going to share out the finished questionnaire just for your reference and for the minutes in the future. But they asked about the heating and cooling system. So we talked about the air source heat pumps, the ventilation and dehumidifying, the air filtration, the relative humidity. Kasian and their subcontractor Quasar were a big help in pulling this information together. They went on to ask about the construction elements which result in energy efficiency. There's a lot of work that's gone into this design around mitigating heat or cooling loss in the building. The windows are fiberglass framed. They have low E coatings, and there was they really tried to perfect the ratio of walls to windows so that again we were maximizing the comfort of the residents. It asks if the project has any renewable elements, and what we responded is that the roof has been designed for a future solar array should the opportunity arise to put that on, as well as a duct bank for a future ground mounted solar array, again, if resources became available to that. The building is net zero ready, as we've talked about in the past, and it talks about climate resilience, et cetera, et cetera. There's some good work in here as well about stormwater management and permeable surfaces and that to manage water on the site. So that a discussion about the accessibility overall of the building and ensuring that, everyone's needs can be met appropriately. And, there's some good information here, so I draw that to you. They also asked just, some details about the existing home. It's a Class C home built in 1984. They wanted to know about decision-making and oversight of the project, so I talked about this task force and then the, things going on to council. And then they wanted to know about the community and their interests. And we just said that, we've had tremendous support from the community for many years around these projects. And we'll just continue to keep everybody up to date as the project progresses. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have a couple of hands that are up. We'll go with Councillor McQueen to begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to Mary Lou, just refresh my mind in the sense we do have some money. So I guess the question will be is, are we doing bridge loan? Like generally when you finish the project and then that's when you lock in your infrastructure or Ontario funding or whatever you need. Can you just refresh my mind and everybody else's as how we work through? Because if it's not going to be completed till 2026, Infrastructure Ontario may have a different rate than today, hopefully. Cross our fingers. So I just wondered if you can just really explain that process as we move through this in the sense of financing and when we do lock into Infrastructure Ontario. Thank you.
For you, Madam Chair. So the process will be, we're going to have a construction loan beginning at the point where I'd suggest when we're finished up using the reserve funds we currently have. So that'll occur sometime, obviously, this year. And construction financing, I just pulled it up, is right now 5.58%. And a 25-year borrow is 4 3/4 right now. So we won't be locking in until we're ready to at least debenture part of it. So that's a future decision on how we manage that. And it would all depend on the rates. Because when you debenture, you're going to have to start paying back your principal as well. So while the construction's ongoing, you're only paying interest. And the subsidy you get for development doesn't begin until there's occupancy. So that's something we're going to have to look at as far as, you know, where the tender comes in, managing the cost throughout the project, and looking at how we structure in the future as to when is the optimum time. Do we wait and debenture the full amount at the end of the project? For Lee Manor, we did 2 debentures. They were 2 years apart. We did one in 2004 and the other 2006. So a lot of that's going to depend on your pricing and how much we can afford to add to the levy requirement in order to build up those debenture payments.
Great, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Chair Matrosoff, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to, Kim, follow up on your comment. What would the downside be if we held off for a month or 6 weeks? If there's a potential for a few $1 million on the table in the spring budget, what's the downside to delaying that 6-week period?
I think the you know, it would really be about the general contractor who had the award, and how anxious they are to be able to begin, and whether or not, you know, you don't know how they have organized their forces and resources, and if then, you know, if you end up backing them up, then does that have a you know, a follow-on effect to other projects, meaning they wouldn't be as amenable. I think it's a conversation that we could have with them, and I would really hope that the province, should the situation present itself, that we would be having a conversation with the province about where things were at and what we qualify. I mean, you can't fault us for having asked on many occasions and expressing our keen interest in you know, being able to work with them on any kind of timeline that was going to assist us with additional financial resources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor McQueen?
Just down the road, when we get to the part of the sod turning, I would like to see us as a committee be there along with our local MPP, and just a good news story. It's been a long old haul on this, and just, I think that would be, along with the warden and ourselves and MPP, I just think it would be a good kickoff to, I know Councillor Hutchison won't have too far to go there, but I just think that's and I think it also reinforces that your comment, Kim, is there is a committee that's, you know, involved with this as well, and that adds some reassurance as well to the province. I think that's a win-win. But yeah, I think that if that can be at that time, that would be great. Thank you. Excellent.
Tom can join Scott on their bicycles. They can come by active transportation. Councillor Greg.
I'm too good at riding a bike.
I was just going to say, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. That when that opens, none of us may be still elected.
I think it was the sod turning. I think we'll take it for one step at a time. Okay, so if there are no further questions on this topic, we can move on to the next one, which is 4C. So now we're going to go to Deputy CAO Schertzer. He's actually got 4C and 4D lined up here. So over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chair Matrosoff. So this is just a quick update, and you've heard already some of the comments earlier from Kim and Mary Lou in terms of the top-up funding, but we were granted a delegation with the Ministry of Long-Term Care at the recent Roma conference. The warden, Councillor Eccles, Councillor McQueen, Chair Matrosoff, and myself met with John Jordan, the parliamentary assistant with the ministry, as well as some ministry staff on the Tuesday, which is the last day of the Roma conference. The purpose was to provide just the ministry with an update on the status of where we're at with the Rockwood project, but also to ask them if about the potential for the top-up funding in round 2 of that funding. So, as you've heard, that's consistent with what Kim has indicated, Mary Lou has indicated. They were obviously pleased to hear the progress being made on the project, but unfortunately, they couldn't provide any commitments on on when or if a second round of construction subsidy top-up funding will be announced. They did note that they've heard similar requests from other delegations, just due to obviously the rising costs of construction, and that they will be considering these requests as part of the preparation of the upcoming budget, but couldn't make any commitments at this stage. We have heard from others that they do anticipate that something might be available, but again, have not heard anything formally. We'll obviously continue to monitor that, and if we hear any updates, we'll make the task force and councillors aware of any updates that we hear about that particular matter. So consistent messaging, at least in terms of that, no commitments at this stage, no announcements at this stage, but we'll keep our ears to the ground, and hopefully we'll hear some good news in the near future. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So let me just say, are there any questions there? I don't see. Oh, yes, Warden Mill.
Well, I would just add that I appreciated the councillors attending and the questions that were put forward. You know, we had a good discussion. The parliamentary assistant was well aware of the project, I thought. He was well briefed on it. I really commend Randy for his optimism, but we got, I would say, less than a pat on the head saying, don't hold your breath. But nonetheless, we'll remain optimistic and we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. So I'll just give an overview of the Early Works project, and I'll just queue up, just share my screen here. I think we shared previously this at one of the budget meetings in council, some of the drone footage of the site, but just to give some further context as to the Early Works project and the scale of this project. So just be 1 second here and I'll share my screen. And okay. Everyone see that?
Not yet.
Oh,
There we go.
everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So this is some drone footage that was taken in early December by some of our GIS staff and our communications manager. We're out taking some pictures so we can document obviously the progress that's made on this overall project. So just to give you a sense of the site. So this is what we call the South Street East extension. I don't know if you can see my arrow there. This is what's called the Rock Street extension. The existing long-term care home is just to the right of the screen, just off the screen. The Durham Curling Club is this building that's right here. To give some further context, the Tim Hortons is just down the road on South Street East here, and so the Highway 6 runs along approximately in this location here. So I'll just play some of the footage, and this gives you an idea of what the site looked like beginning of December. Since that time, there's been significant work on the site. Pretty much all the excess soil, the pre-grading, has been completed on the site. So all this material that was being excavated at the time, that's all been removed. All these sanitary works, and you can see in early December, they were finishing up some sanitary insulation works along South Street East here. All the sanitary servicing works have been completed. So that's all the works that are on South Street East, as well as Rock Street. Pretty much all the water main work is also completed. They're just finalizing up some connections, and we'll be doing some testing in the near future. So from a road construction access, a pre-grading perspective, the sanitary works, the water works, that's pretty much all been completed. Some of the storm drain connections, that's still to follow. And they'll be working over that in the next few weeks. They had to do a bit of a pause when we had that cold snap, but they only lost, I think, 2 or 3 days work, if that. And they've been back on the site ever since. And so, as you can see, they've done a lot of work on the site since what the site looked like before they started. So just play this drone footage here, just to give you a sense of the scale of the site. The plan is that we will be taking some further drone footage. once all the snow clears. So we'll be doing that as the construction activity goes along, so we can again document the site, share some of that information with the community, and through our website, so that people are aware of the project overall. Yeah, so that gives you just an update in terms of where we're at with the early works. Everything is proceeding on schedule and on budget with respect to that project. I think in the end, sorry, I'll stop sharing my screen here. What we'll have is a site that is ready to go from a construction perspective for the general contractor. We hope that this will equate to some competitive bids when we go out to tender, because majority of the risks of a clean green site, so to speak, has been pretty much removed because it's all pre-graded. Like I said, the servicing connections are all connected, ready to go. So the GC just has to essentially build the building and finish out the rest of the site. So we're hoping that equates into some competitive bids once we go to tender. As Andrew noted, we will be doing a mandatory site bid meeting on site with the pre-qualified contractors, just so they can get a lay of the land and what's already been done on the property. And we will also have the early works contractor on site, because they will have to work hand in hand with the early works contractor in terms of finishing up whatever needs to be done before they start mobilizing the site. And then the early works contractor comes back in once the building's been built to pave the roads and do the final curb work as it relates to the overall road work. So the two will have to work hand in hand, no doubt, for finishing up the overall project. But we've been quite happy and pleased with the work that JT Excavating has been done for this project. They've been great to work with, and giving us lots of notice when Rock Street and other things had to be closed, so that we could get the long-term care staff to park in other locations. With that, Transportation Services also developed a parking area on the existing Rockwood site, so that to allow for some more additional parking for long-term care staff. So they were able to finish that up in the fall. So great teamwork that's going on in terms of this overall project so far, and we hope that continues as we move forward.
Excellent. I know that we started doing little snippets of videos for updating people when we have Bridge 2 and 3, or Bridge 2 and 3 were being, and it was a longer process because we were waiting for materials and the contractor and things. It was really helpful for the community to be able to bridge that with little updates, and
Yeah.
people do tend to like the visuals now rather than just reading one. So I think
For sure.
that's a good idea. So are there questions? Don't see any hands there. And I would add on that note too, that when people, if people say, well, what about the time invested of staff to do that? You're probably answering, 10 questions by sharing that one video that you now don't need to answer individually. So that seems to me like a good investment.
For sure. We already have some of the drone. We have the drone already, so at our disposal to be able to do some of this footage. So and our GIS staff already have the technical capabilities to do that. So yeah, it's a good use of existing staff resources and time to help document this overall project, which is one of the biggest projects obviously the county's tackled. So it's good to document.
Excellent. Okay, we have a comment from Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Chair. And Randy, you just mentioned staff parking, and just a question to either Jennifer or Karen. I know concerns have come up in some of our other long-term care facilities around staff parking and going to the vehicles late at night. Has this been addressed through proper lighting at the new site in Durham?
Through you, Madam Chair. It's interesting you should say that, because our maintenance staff did install a light for the new parking lot. And we have received complaints from the neighbors across the street. So we have made some adjustments, which made it better. But it's a bit of an ongoing process to see if we can still make some improvements, because like, although I say it's been made better, they're still not totally satisfied. So we're still working on that process.
Okay, and Deputy CAO, you want to add
Yeah,
to that?
and as it relates to the new site, there'll be adequate lighting that's been built in as part of the design of the project to ensure that there's proper lighting from a visibility and safety perspective for both staff and visitors.
Mhm. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, CAO.
Just to let everyone know, I think Randy said it, but there will be a press release that goes out when the tender is released, so that's there. And there's a lot of good information on the grey.ca under redeveloping Rockwood Terrace. So if you haven't checked that out recently, it has been updated by communication staff with some of the renderings and the video that Randy showed and that sort of thing. So that's good. Thanks.
Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, so that concludes then all of the updates that were for discussion and direction. That allows us to move through the rest of the agenda. We do not have any pieces of correspondence. We did not add any other business. So next is the next meeting date. And is that the March 21st one, Madam Clerk?
My hope is that everyone is available for Friday, March 22nd at 9:30. And if that's the case, I can remove that hold on March 21st from your calendar.
Okay. All right. And with that, we would entertain at this point in time a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mackey and seconded by Councillor McQueen. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? And that is carried, Madam Clerk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Goodly do.
Thank you. See